Hey everybody, this is Myth, life and performance coach for ambitious individuals looking to spark and initiate their next evolution using my aligned results framework. And this is the Actually You Can podcast. If you're here, you're probably an ambitious individual looking to achieve big things and live a thriving, fulfilled life. If so, you've come to the right place. I believe that in order to reach your goals, you must first do the inner work to gain a better understanding of yourself, your habits, and how you view yourself and the world. You then need to develop sustainable behaviour patterns that will best support you in reaching your goals. And this is exactly what this podcast is here to support you with. Be sure to hit subscribe on whatever platform you're listening to so you can easily find this podcast again and tune into future episodes. We release episodes each week. Today we're talking about human design with Vicki Dean, fitness expert and human design practitioner. Vicki has a background in CrossFit and has achieved significant success in the sport. She is also passionate about helping families and their parents understand their children and support them in their unique gifts and talents. In this episode, Vicki shares her journey from being a successful CrossFit athlete to discovering human design and how it transformed her life. She discusses the importance of understanding our own conditioning and how human design can help us uncover our true potential. She also has an incredibly generous offer to all listeners of today's episode, so be sure to tune in right to the end to hear how you can take advantage of this. So get ready to learn more about human design and how it can be used as a tool to gain a deeper understanding of yourself and to create a more aligned and fulfilled life. Because actually, you can. Hi, Vicki. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Hi, Miv. Thank you for having me. I feel very honoured to be here.
And to kick off today's show, I would love to hear, what did life look like for Vicki pre-2014?
Simple. 3 children, happily married. Well, I thought we were happily married. And I stayed home and raised the kids. And there was an inkling of me knowing that I just didn't feel good. I knew there was something more for me, but I just didn't know what it was. And I don't want to take away from being a mum by any means, because that is such a privilege and an honour to be a mum. But there was just this itching of, there's more to this. I don't feel good. What's going on? So.
And so would you say that life looked pretty good from the outside?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I had the life that people wanted. People would spend time with us and be, envious of the life that we had and that we lived, and our relationship and, all that. But really underneath there was, it was very good at hiding, I guess. Yeah.
And so I think a lot of people can resonate with this. So people can have the house, have the family, have a really high paying job, if that's your definition of success or society's definition of success. And they have this inkling feeling, to your point, that there's more. Like if they were to say to themselves, if this was the next 60 years of my life, would I be happy? They'd probably say, fuck no. And so I'm
Yeah.
interested to hear, what was the catalyst for you wanting to act on that inkling and do something about it?
So I didn't value what it meant to be a mother back then. I was 21 when I had my first child, and if I knew then what I know now, raising my children would have been very, very different, and I feel very honoured that I have the opportunity to parent again. With I have a 4th child with my new husband now. Well, not that he's new, we've been together for 6 years. But back then I just had so much inner turmoil that I was unable and very unconscious to actually see. I think I just took everything for granted, to be honest. I didn't really understand. And as I'm going through, my unwounding, I like to call it, I have really noticed, my mum didn't teach me She was a housewife. She raised the children. And, I'm going through all my money story and all, where the roots of it have all come from. And I'm looking at the situation and learning that, e epigenetics is such a huge study now of the generations before us and how we carry it down our lineage, and I look at my story compared to my mother's is exactly the same. I was pregnant at 21. She was pregnant at 21 with me. She had a husband, that my father, who, money was the be all and end all, and he lied about money, and he would tell us that he didn't have money, but then he'd be driving around fancy cars. And so then I've created this story of that money causes people to lie, and then their separation was ugly, and it was the same age that I was when I went through my separation, and money was a very big part of our life. I didn't care about money. I was like, "Oof, I don't even care about it." I just gave my power away and buried my head in the sand because I didn't wanna know about it. And then when the wheels would fall off, it was like, "Holy shit, what I don't even know what to do from here." And then my separation, it was just ugly as well, and it was nasty, and it was just the mirror of what my mum had been through, and only now am I seeing that that shit's ingrained in us, and I am so determined to change that story for my family. I mean, my daughter's 23, she's gorgeous, and she doesn't have children, thank goodness. She's being a teen. She's growing up. She's being a young adult. She's learning that life. But I've been able to influence her into showing her that there is another way. We're having different conversations. My mum never spoke about money. She never talked about this, and I wouldn't be talking about it if I hadn't gone through it in 2014 and had my own awakening, I guess you could say, or my own challenges. So, yeah, it's so interesting how we I feel like this generation, like my age, so I'm 44, I feel like we are breaking the cycles and the patterns for our children. And then our children are going to be the change in this world. They're the ones that are coming through and that are going to be totally different. And, that's exciting, especially now that I dive into this work that I'm doing. So, yeah.
Yeah. And so you mentioned that 2014 was sort of a year of awakening for you.
Mm.
Talk us through that. What happened that year?
Yeah, so that was the year that my 12-year relationship, so 10 years of marriage, broke down. Interestingly, um, I 3 years prior, had started CrossFit, and I had kind of been the housewife that I was just home, and yeah, it was I could be completely wrong when I say this, but what I recognize is that I got into fitness and I started training and loving CrossFit and actually was quite good at it and started to compete and then started competing at a high level. And that's when the wheels started to turn, the wheels started to fall off. And it was interesting, the comments. It's like, you're going to do this, but you don't want me to come along. And that was so far from the truth. Like all my big competitions when I'd be at Down Hunt, at regionals, it was, come with me and support me. And he would be out drinking all weekend, coming in at 4 o'clock in the morning with a shopping trolley. And, and I've got to get up and compete, and I'm thinking, you don't even care that I'm doing this, like this. And it was just really interesting to watch. The more I evolved as a person and sort of started to explore my own friendships and, all of that, and started to, I was becoming good at something and realized that I could make a career out of this. At that point, I probably didn't. Oh, hang on, 2014. Yeah, I did have the gym. I opened my gym at Lake Macquarie 2013. So, I'd started to realize that I could really make a career out of this. I'd opened my gym. I was sponsored by Again Faster, so I was getting flown around the country to compete and, getting all these great opportunities. And so, but at the same time, I had 3 children. So, as you know, when you're competing at a high level, it's like Ben Bergeron talks about this. We can only put our eggs into one basket pretty much if we want to be good at something, like the thinner, the more baskets we have that we put our eggs in, the less likely we're going to succeed. Well, I shouldn't say that. That's not necessarily true. But, it was like I went all in, almost to the point, I'm going to say, that training became my priority over my family. And that sounds really harsh. I was still a present mother, but I trained every morning for an hour. And it was compulsory. I did it 6 days a week. I went and trained at another gym that was going to benefit. This is in the early days. Was going to benefit my training to be more competitive. And it's interesting how even when we'd go on holidays, my priority was I needed to train every day. I wanted to train every day. I loved it, and it gave me a sense of self. And I wasn't just a mum. I was now Vicki, who was quite good at CrossFit and was competing and was starting to get a reputation within that space. And then 2014, the wheels fell off, and it was December, and we had temporarily split 6 months prior. And I think it occurred to me that I wasn't happy. When I look on it now, I see that I just was experiencing unhappiness within me. And again, it was running to the next thing, because I've been married twice. This is now my third marriage. And I recognize that I have just this whole time, I have been running away from myself. And I didn't really understand that until, even though I went through a bit of like, there's more to this life. So 2014, we went through the breakup, and this wonderful client of mine that was training there, Megs Barton, I absolutely adore this woman. She was just, all of a sudden she was there. And it's so interesting how the universe just throws, like, when the student is ready, the teacher always arrives. And she did. She just showed up. She'd always been there, but just hadn't been in that radar for me, and we always chatted and got on really well. And she was such a bright spark. And she just opened my eyes up. She gave me a book. It was The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. And honestly, I didn't understand hardly anything of it. I was like, what is unconscious? What is conscious? What even is this? But I was determined to listen to it. I listened to it through audiobooks. I tried to read it, but I could not make sense of it. And I started to grasp a few things. And in that time, my marriage, my separation just went nuts. I became a wild animal. I was, behaving in ways that I'd never behaved in before. I was so angry, and, there was a lot of untoward things going on with our businesses. And, we he was with our accountant. So she knew all, that's who he ended up being with. And so she knew all the ins and outs of our businesses. So then things were it just got messy. And, I'd gone from living a life of comfort and not having to worry about money to then everything being cut off. And it was heartbreaking. And it was the same experience as my mum. My mum had raised us, our children, like, raised us, and we moved to another country. And then my mum and dad split up, and my dad left to come back to the UK and left us in a new country in a half-built house that had no heating, no curtains on the walls. It had no floor coverings. And it was in the middle of winter, and my mum had not a cent to her name. And my grandfather, his father, had to send her money to support us. And it's so interesting, my whole life I was raised by my father, who constantly bagged my mother out all the time, told me that she had all the money, and I'm sitting here going, it doesn't really add up. It doesn't make sense. And now, obviously, as I am an adult myself, I saw it all. I was, and it was so interesting. And the same story has repeated for me. And what these men don't realize is that you, as the mother, and don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that this can't be flipped the other way. Absolutely, I understand that. But what happens is the fathers or the mothers, they think that they're hurting the other person, but they're actually destroying the souls of their children. And now I love my dad, but I don't have a relationship with him. I have no problem to ring him tomorrow and have a conversation with him. but we don't have a relationship, and that's really sad. But I've had to do a lot of work around this, and I'm okay with that. And it is what it is. And maybe one day I'm sure there's going to be a lot of healing there. Well, there is a lot of healing there for me when, to mend that relationship. But am I ready to do that just yet? Not really. And so the same is true for my children. They're going to eventually grow up and they're going to be able to see these things. Dad's going on all these beautiful holidays and, he's driving nice cars and he's going to work and earning money, but yet dad won't buy me a pair of shoes. Go and ask your mother. So it gets really challenging. So that was, it's just been an interesting journey to sit here now and to have this sort of knowledge and awareness and all these experiences and to be doing my own unwounding and to see that, this story has played out. I've allowed this story to play out again in my life. And so I'm like, no, it stops with me. So
And we all have the power to stop a cycle, right? Like any sort of relationship, there's two
100%.
people who playing roles in it, and
Yeah.
it takes a lot of courage, and it's not easy to be the person who's going,
No,
right, I'm going to put an end to this, because there's a whole heap of uncertainty
absolutely.
that comes to it. And I'm interested to
Yeah.
hear, it sounds like, I mean, you've mentioned you've done okay at CrossFit. For those who are listeners, you have done quite well. What are some of the achievements you have achieved in CrossFit?
Yeah, so 2011 I started, and interestingly, by November of that year, I did a comp in October, and um, it was an open, so it was there was open and advanced, and I won that, and I was like, I quite like this, is fun, and at that point, I had already signed up for a competition down in Melbourne, and it was the Schwartz Challenge, and, like, I had no idea what I was stepping into, and, it ended up being one of the biggest comps that that was in Australia outside of regionals back then, and when I competed there, I remember competing and I made the final, and I had no idea. I was just watching these athletes in awe. Danae Brown, she's like and we're friends now, and I just was in awe of her. And I remember watching a handstand walk down in the final, and I was like, oh my God, I have to reach out to this girl. Now, I've never fangirled, I've never messaged people before. And I did after that comp. I was like, oh my gosh, you are such an inspiration. And she just gave me a little bit of advice. And she's like, you did really well, and you should go and, make sure you learn how to do this well. And at the same time, that same comp, Ben Schwartz, I was doing pull-ups and I smiled at him. He was just walking around being the head judge, and I smiled at him and he stopped. And he said to Ace, who was judging me, he said, "Who does this girl remind you of?" And Ace said D. And so it was really that was my connection with Ben. And Ben is one of I consider him to be a dear friend. I was coached by him for 18 months, and he's just the most amazing man, the most amazing coach. And and then it all started from there. And so then then I started to learn, oh my God, that was like one of the biggest comps in Australia. And then the following year I qualified for regionals. They were taking top 60. That was in 2012, and I finished around 40th. And I decided I didn't have my strength there. So strength has always been a weakness for me. But I was very skilled. I had the gymnastics down pat, which what I know now is I think gymnastics is the key. Like, everyone's strong. Everyone can be strong. It's quite easy. But and fitness is the same, but the gymnastics skill takes it's usually the gaping hole that a lot of athletes will have. And so I decided to go team with CrossFit Newcastle, and we actually finished fourth. So they were only taking top 3 at the time. So we just missed out, which was really cool. It was my first year competing on on the big floor, and I was like, right, that's it. I remember talking to Daz Coughlin, who was my coach at the time, and I was like, right, I'm going individual. And he's like, okay, this is what you like. Next year, I want to compete as an individual. And back then, the girls had to snatch a 32.5 kilo dumbbell. That was 2012. Yeah,
That's like
literally. I
half of
couldn't
most
even,
people's body weights. Like,
right?
yeah.
Literally. And I remember we were figuring out in the team who's gonna do what workouts. And he said to me, Vic, go and get the 32.5 kilo dumbbell. And I struggled to even deadlift it. And he's like, okay, we're not putting you on that workout. I was like, there's no way. And interestingly, that was the workout that, none of us girls could snatch the 32.5 kilo. But one of them was the closest, and she had to just spend the whole time working on that. But anyway, so that year, 2012, I did team, and then the following year, I ended up qualifying seventh in the Open, and that was 2013. I went to regionals, finished ninth, and then I remember saying to my coach at the time, what's going to be the goal for next year? And I really committed. Like, I didn't drink alcohol. I didn't do anything with my nutrition. I just continued on because back then it wasn't really a big thing. I just trained a lot. And then, which was like such an old school mentality of CrossFit, right? Just train, 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 and you'll be right, mate. And anyway, then the following year, which was 2014, I finished. It was that year was my best year competing. I went and did New Zealand. I did Schwartz. I finished third at Schwartz, which is actually I've competed at Schwartz. I competed at Schwartz every year, and finishing third in 2014 was my biggest achievement ever. I competed the best that I'd ever been. I've always been that competitive person that's like, oh, this is cool. I'm so stoked to be here. Can't wait for the Sunday night party. Like just taking the piss really. And I was just there for the fun, not the fun because I loved the competition. I loved being on that main stage, but I never really competed with mongrel, if that makes sense. It was always like, oh, like I'm just stoked to be here. And that Schwartz, 2014, I finished third, and I was hungry for it. I got disappointed at myself, which I'd never done before. God, I didn't sit in it for long. I've never been that athlete that sulks and carries on, which is such a poor trait, if you ask me. Um, Sorry, but it's a reality. Um, and and so that year I finished ninth at regionals again. So I changed. That's when I went to Schwartz. I went to Ben, and we sort of had this thing from 2013. I'd asked that coach at the time, my new goal is I want to qualify next year. I want to be better. And he was like, oh, you're about 30. I think I was 36 at the time. You're 36, you're getting older, you're not gonna get much stronger. And I was like, and I felt really shit. And I was like, yeah, okay. And then we opened CrossFit Lake Macquarie. So I ended up reaching out to Ben and saying, Ben, will you coach me? And he said, Vicki, I will help you. And then we worked together for 18 months. And he said, I don't care what happens. He said, you're either going to do better or you're going to finish the same. And I was like, yep, okay, I'm in. And standing on that stage 2014, I remember I had all my crew from Lake Macquarie. They all had blue wigs on. And I had I had Ben and all the Schwartz crew there. And I remember doing it was the hang snatch. So we had to do a heavy hang snatch. And I had been down in Melbourne a couple of weeks before, and Ben had just been loading up my barbell. I didn't even know it was on there because everything's pounds down there. And he just kept loading my barbell up, and I felt so good. And I ended up snatching 70, hang snatching 70, which was pretty substantial back then as well, right?
Yeah.
And I remember going out onto that floor. I have goosebumps just now because it's just one of those moments that you just remember. And I was on the lifting platform, and I got my first lift in. I think I did 65. And then I lifted a second one because you had 3 attempts. I did 68 and I failed. And looked up at Ben, and he's standing there like on the edge because he just was always there. Oh, he's such an amazing man. And he looked at me, he goes, go up, go up. And I was like, fuck it. So I put 70 on, and I just snatched it. And I don't know, you've probably seen it. I posted a fair bit. It's one of Mike Townsend. He was the photographer at the time, and he captured it. And I was beside myself. And the whole of my support crew it was just insane, Miff. Like, it was one of the most amazing experiences. And I finished 7th that day. So, my weakest component, which was strength, I finished 7th. So it just goes to show, luckily it was a snatch, so it's quite technical. So, that always helps, right? And then the following year, 2015, was the year of hell, and I qualified again. I was training from January. I can already feel it in my voice. January to qualifiers, I was training probably 2 to 3 times a week. I was struggling. Sometimes I would turn up and just couldn't even move. It really affected me, and I my when I look back now, my goal in life is to be able to be so firm in who I am as a person that none of that stuff will ever rattle me again. That I can move through these things without being affected in such a way. And, when you go through marriage breakdown, you're going through grief. You're grieving the loss of a relationship and your family and, all of that. So that year I qualified, but I finished 20th. So it was still pretty damn good.
100%.
And then the following year I went team. Still qualified. I just qualified outside of individual. But again, I wasn't training. I was just training for fun. And yeah, and then, so that's probably my most significant. Then CrossFit changed and it went to sanctionals and did all these weird things. So I sort of stepped back a little bit. But then at 40, I thought, no, I'm going to get back. And they had the year at Down Under.
Yep.
Remember they came back after, it was still a sanctional event, but they had it back at Wollongong. And I was like, I'm going for it. So I dialed in my nutrition. I had someone making my food to exactly my macros. And I only decided this in the January. I was like, nah, I'm going to give it another crack. And because it was the year I fell pregnant with Frankie. So yeah, the January I went back in and it had a massive big swim in it as well. So I trained for 6 weeks for that. And yeah, did so well. I was like, wow, look at me go, that's such a cool thing to be able to, people would kill to be able to have that experience. People train for years to try to get into that, that space. And I'm in that 5% of people, that gets to, I'm honored to be able to do that. But that year I didn't feel like I was taking the piss so much because I was, I really did. I honed in my nutrition and, really focused and knuckled down. So yeah, that's been my achievements in CrossFit.
And hearing you talk about them, any athlete, when you hear another athlete's stories of success, you do get chills and you can see yourself like in the position, just hearing the crowd and seeing your support crew, and you know how much it means to people. And it's such
Oh,
incredible achievements of what you've done, especially given, I guess, the environment you were doing it in. You said weren't probably as happy as you could be in your marriage,
mm,
and you're starting to get
mm,
those inklings of things need to change. Despite
mm,
that, you did such incredible things with your physical body. And I'm
mm,
interested to hear your thoughts. I feel like personally with me, training is such an incredible tool to train the mind. I'm interested to hear what's your
mm.
relationship between the physical body and the mental and spiritual aspects.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you're training resiliency, right? I mean, look, I've been in the gym industry now, owning gyms since 2013. We're now, I own Steel Coast with my husband. We've been there for, I think, 5 years. 2017 we opened. So I had Lake Macquarie, sold that, opened, went short time in business with Body Depot. That was just a shambles. Obviously a lot of lessons came out of that. And then we rebranded to Steel Coast, which was in 2017. And, I watch now. I have, if I, to be honest, I have stepped out of CrossFit. I stepped out, I don't know if you've noticed in my socials, but I've had about 5 months because I was really trying to heal my body. I didn't realize how much my nervous system was under pressure, and stressed, and how much I was holding it in my body. So please know that I love CrossFit and I am starting to step back into it now, but with a healed body. And I think I've spent all those years training CrossFit running away from myself as well and not really wanting to unwind all the things that are going on within me. So, as an athlete, I watch in my gym and I watch the competitors now, and I'm trying to use discernment. I don't want to be judgmental, but I feel like a lot of what we do is mental in that space. You get into that top 10 field. It's not about physical ability. We all can do the same things. We can all yeah, definitely there's a little bit of skill difference and there's a little bit of strength difference, but it comes down to how much do you want it? And interestingly, Ben Schwartz said to me, he said, Vic, um, the question I have for you when we start working together is, do you want to be a regionals athlete or do you want to be a games athlete? Because
Mm,
they're two different things.
yeah.
And I said, I just want to be a regionals athlete because I just want to go out on the Sunday night and, I just want to, have fun and, all that sort of stuff. And, it was just really interesting. So then I always wonder to myself, did I limit myself by saying that?
Mhm,
I think I probably did, you know? And it's like, but really the reality was I didn't have the capacity to train like a games athlete because of my family. That
mhm,
was the reality. I think
mhm,
I was in the early days, I was the only athlete that had a child in that top
mhm.
sort of 20, 30 field. And I was one of the older competitors as well. So, yeah, it's so
All I'm hearing is
interesting.
you were just full badass before it actually became a thing. Oh, paving the way for a lot
Just,
of the incredible athletes who are out there competing,
yeah.
at the moment. And I love that you touched on this because I think especially when I mean, I was never a very successful CrossFit athlete. I did love it, and I competed in a few local comps, and I was friends with people who did compete at regionals and still
Yep.
do. And there was very much, I felt like an old school approach with double sessions a day, really stressing
Mm,
out your nervous system, always
mhm,
training, and that sort of resistance to recovery.
mm,
And it's really interesting. Like I really admire that you took that step away from it, and now you're approaching it with a different mentality because I think it's so empowering to come from it. It's almost like you're coming from a place of love versus a place of like, I'm not good enough. I need to keep pushing, trying
mm,
harder to make myself good when you're actually like,
mm,
what's more empowering is if I come it from a place of I'm good enough as it is. Let's see exactly what we can do. And I'm going to
mm,
support myself and do whatever I need to do to get there, but in a really kind and loving way. I'd be interested to see what impact that had on people's performance long term.
mm.
Because I feel that we could get the same results but in a way that was a lot kinder to each other. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I'm living proof of that. So even down under last year, I competed in masters, and I wasn't even fit for the qualifiers. Qualified, and then I really stepped into. Okay, I don't know what it was. I can't remember. It was 6 weeks or whatever, and I just ramped up my training. And when I say ramped up, I was still it was once a day. It was you're probably doing extras, but it wasn't the traditional, because what I've learned is the more rest I can have, the more primed my body actually is and the more I can create the intensity within. And so then you're gonna get you get more beneficial it's more beneficial, towards the end goal. But, I only ever made the decision to step into I and I sound this doesn't sound that great, but for me personally, having all that skill base, I know, strength is a huge weakness, and obviously not training strength is becomes an issue. But for me, I can it's like we're gonna do a comp just in-house local comp. I've had 5 months off. I've probably done about 6 CrossFit workouts. I trained 3 days this week in CrossFit Byron Bay. I haven't trained since, and I won't train until Monday, but there's no stress and pressure to train because I know that the all I have to do is, am I willing to suffer during that 10 minutes of output? Because I know that my mind is what's in between me excelling in that workout or not doing so great. And I learnt this a couple of years ago. I have I think it might have not last year, the year before. I had two two qualifiers for individual qualifiers in our gym, male and female. They were our top athletes in our gym. And then there was another guy who was super fit, and we qualified a team, and we still did the qualifiers, and I was the weakest link, which is new to me. Was that's not something that happened very often, and I still I could have sat in all my shit of, "Oh my god, I'm the weakest link, and this is gonna be terrible," and I was like, "No, I'm gonna get in, rip in, and do the best that I can." Like, yeah, sucks to be this, but, at the end of the day, I'm here. I'm gonna put in the best effort. We ended up doing this. It was this disgusting, and it was fitness as well, which was never a strength of mine either. And it was, I like the long, medium weight workout that, the chippers, that's my
Yeah.
favorite, with lots of
Just
gymnastics in them.
whittle people down slowly.
Yeah, literally. But this hard and fast stuff, ugh, yuck. But, it was, running, so shuttle runs and then burpees over the worm. And I we did yeah, it was foul, and those 3 people are so bloody fit, and I wasn't, like, I had not been training enough and, to be, like, in this team, but honestly, they pulled me with them, and the determination, you talked about before, this resiliency that creates in our life, like, that sheer I did not quit, Miff. I was groaning. I was making noises that I had never made in my life before because I had literally, I can honestly say that workout, I gave it everything. And it's just such an interesting thing, we get so caught up in our minds and we let our minds sort of dictate the pain that we're feeling and the suffering. But really, at the end of the day, our body will never quit. Our mind is what makes us quit. So,
And you obviously have a great deal of experience in the CrossFit, the gym space, and the
mm,
physical body. And you're also very skilled and talented in all things mental and spiritual. And
mm.
another skill set that you have is related to the ability to look at human design. And that's, I mean, I've had a great time talking to you about the gym and CrossFit. I could talk to you about this for ages. And I'm really interested to hear with this physical aspect, when did you start looking into the more mental and spiritual tools? And more specifically, when did you start to get an interest in human design specifically?
So human design finds you, okay? It sounds really weird, but it's like, those that whenever you talk to people that are into human design, it's like, no, it found me. And it's so interesting because it did. And I just stumbled across it. I didn't even know what it was. But the thing that working in the gym space for 12 years on such a superficial level, a physical level, you know, I've worked with thousands and thousands of clients and I've observed in the gym, and I have a very intuitive sense that I've always been able to tell when someone's injured or if someone's carrying, they've had something that they've experienced. I never really understood it. And I've always been that person that I would get into conversations with my clients or my members, and they would, like, some people I didn't even know, and they would go, I didn't even know why I just shared that with you, but I just did. So I've been this space of safety, I guess. I've been able to, you know, um, hold space for people as well. And I've also not been able to because of my own inner, wounding that I've carried for so long. So it's been a very interesting sort of journey these last 6 years, definitely, and more so these last 2 years as I've stepped into human design. But anyway, long story short, when all the shit hit the fan with the world, I was like, holy shit, our gym's been closed down. This is hectic. I'm going to have to think about something else. So I was like, I might jump into nutrition. It makes sense to go there. Well, I did not like it. And, I'm working with people in nutrition and I'm like, this makes no sense. Like the food, yes, abs are made in the kitchen. I get that. But they're coming to me for nutrition. They weren't coming to me for emotional health. And we all know
Mm.
that when we train 24/7, we're running away from something. When we eat food that is not that great for us, there's something going on underneath all of that. And I was like, this is so superficial. I just don't think, but for me to sort of push into that space of, there's something going on deeper here, people were very resistant to it because they came for food. They were like, no, it's my food. And it's like, it's not, like, and I knew that from my own experience, Miff, because I've never been someone that has, and I've never had to worry about what I've put in my mouth. Granted, I have trained hard. I get that. But it's always been, it's almost like when my life felt like it was falling apart, I would notice the shift on the scales. And so intuitively, I've just thought, okay, well, there's something deeper going on with this. Anyway, I was doing nutrition coaching and I was looking into something. Next minute, human design popped up and I was like, oh, what's this? And then I started to read into it and I was like, oh, this is really interesting because 2014, obviously, I've been on that path of energetics and spirituality and just sort of learning all the things. Hadn't really integrated much of it, but I knew it, right? Because there's a difference. I
That
just
takes
posted
time.
about it today. Well,
Yeah.
no. Well, yes, but knowledge is power, right? That's the saying. I don't believe that. I believe
Mm,
integration is where the
mm,
power is, right? So we can have all the knowledge in the world because I did,
mm,
but was I truly living it? Not until I recently had done my own work. When I started diving into human design, I was like, oh my gosh, like here I am. I've known all these things, but I never really was living it. I would live a little bit of it and I would talk it, but I wasn't truly integrating it. So yeah, so that's how I stumbled on human design and it's extraordinary. It's not logical. Um it's um it's an experiment. It's people have said to me, but it puts you in a box. It certainly doesn't put you in a box. It's not profiling. It kind of feels like it, but it really isn't. My mentor really talks about that we have access to our whole chart, that whole we have access to every part of it, even though there's parts of our chart that are specific to us, we can still experience and we can still have access to all of it because really we were born whole. It's just we've fractured and picked up the luggage that we've carried and we've just popped it in our backpack and just kept dragging that backpack around, catching more, filling it up with more stuff that we take on and belief systems and all the things until we just get to that point, like I did probably 2 years ago, where I was like, oh, this is just shit. I feel so shit. What is wrong with me? I'm so stressed. I'm so angry. I'm so reactive. And then that was it. Yeah.
And so if someone hasn't heard of human design before, how would you
Mhm.
describe it? I mean, I mentioned it's not logical. How would you describe the illogical?
So it's a beautiful synthesis of energetics, astrology, um, the I Ching Book of Wisdom, the chakra system, the Hindu chakra system, the Kabbalah tree, the Jewish book of wisdom, and quantum science, and it's spirituality. It's just this beautiful synthesis of all these things. The I Ching Book of Wisdom, the Chinese Book of Wisdom is in there that's based off that as well. And so it's that, what's that meme? It's if my son sends me a message saying, what's my date of birth, time of birth, and me as my reply would be, stay away from that woman.
100%. Or I'd be
Right?
like, she's your friend. You want to
Yeah,
hang out with
yeah,
her.
literally, she's profiling you. Well, that's me. That's who I am. I'm like that one that would be saying to my husband, "What's your date of birth and time of?" So yeah, it's but what's so fascinating, so I'll share a little bit about myself. So I said to you that when I was working in the gym, I would have this intuitive knowing. I didn't understand. I was quite scared of it as well, of just I would sense, I would feel in my shoulder if someone was carrying a shoulder injury. Um, I would have people come up to me and share things about themselves emotionally that, they're looking at me going, I don't even know why I told you that. I hardly even know you. And what I've learned about myself is that I have a 5-1 profile. And the 5 in my profile means that I am the healer. I am the person that people come to that feels safe to share, and I'm the person that people look to help and to guide. And the one of me is, because it's written 5-1, the one of me is the investigator, which makes sense because I sign up for every single freaking course that there is and, you know, all these things. But then on the flip side, that profile has a shadow aspect of it or an unresourceful behavior. So we can get stuck in that if we don't understand it. So for me, the 5 can be a projection field. So if I didn't understand that, because I've had experiences where I feel like, oh, well, I don't even know why that happened. And I don't understand why they came and said that I did this to them because I don't even know how that happened. So I actually mirror back to people the things that they need to learn about themselves. And that can be positive or negative. And that's my role as a healer, or that person, that voice of reason or that guide. And then the unresourceful behavior of a line one is that I can get stuck in I need to learn more because I don't feel confident in sharing about this, but I have all the wisdom in there, right? And so this has been a really big thing because as I've stepped into a personal brand, I've been so fearful to put myself out there. I don't know enough, especially about human design. And then you ask me a question, I'm just like, oh, there it is. And I rattle it off, It's so easy because it's there. And I just have to trust myself.
And so we'll keep showing you just how much you know, building that trust in yourself.
Uh-oh.
Why should someone be interested in human design? How can it help them?
It can help with conditioning. So when I work with my clients, I have a form that they fill out, like a heap of stuff that they fill out of where they're at and all that. And so this is where I use it. I share it and it's what I do and I will share it with my clients. But then there's some clients from that logical side that you just don't. But I still keep it there in the background because I use it as a guide. So they might have my clients that come and say to me, I'm really struggling with my self-worth. I don't know, especially business clients, I don't know how to value, like I don't know what to charge. So that's someone who's challenged, they're being challenged in their self-worth. They don't know they don't realize their value. And that's the difference between an open G center and a defined G center. And it's so interesting because I'm defined and I have no issue putting a price on what I give. And I haven't, and it's not that I wouldn't give anything for free because I feel like we should be in service. And I want this to be reachable for every, every demographic. But what I'm saying is when you compare an open G center and a defined G center, I know what I'm worth. I know what my value is and what I am worth. And then I've got a friend who's got an open G center and she's going around doing all these free things, which is, I see the method to the madness. It absolutely is, but it's just different. Like we just have a different view on you know, what's worth. And when you look at the chart, I can see these things about ourselves. So I use it as a guide and I look at it and I go, oh, yes, that makes sense. So then I can see. And so what it does is it gives me an opportunity to show people their shadow aspects of themselves because you've heard of shadow work, right? Shadow work is perfect when you're working with someone else because you can see everyone's shadows, but you can't see your own.
Oh, yes, too true.
Right? Or you can see some of them, but that one shadow that just is just an underlying theme, we can't see it in ourselves. And so what human design does is it shows you these shadows. And I do this exercise with my clients where in the very early stages, it's the myself and the not self diamond. And I use the gates. So these little numbers, I use the gates and I show people what their not self is. So you put all the words, for one of them for me is suspicion. There's a scarcity and lack there. And there's, what else is there? God, um, unease is another one. And I did this exercise for myself. And so I put all these words down and I looked at it and it brought tears to my eyes because it's like, oh my God, I'm living. That's me. I can see myself in all of those things. And so there's no hiding. There's absolutely no hiding. And it hurts and it makes you feel sad because you're like, oh my God, I've been living out of this side of myself that's how because 80 each of us are all, unless you've started to work through your journey of evolution, I like to say, we're all living our shadows in some way. We just can't see them. Other people can, but we can't. And so then I do the opposite is true. So for me, when I work with clients, it's all about seeing their potential because that's what's helped me. I do think it's very important that we witness our past and we can logically see where those stories have played out. But for me, And my greatest evolution has been human design, and it has been knowing what my potential is. Because when I saw that fear of being seen, for example, which is so strong in my chart, and especially in this going out on my own in, personal brand, I saw those words and I saw the opposite of that, the gift that I have, which is intuition. And that's my superpower. And I was like, holy hell. And I was like, right, imperfect action. I'm in, I'm doing it. And just all of a sudden, I released it like that, just by
Wow.
seeing my potential. And that's what human design does for me. And it's what I use to help my clients with.
And you've put it all so eloquently, and I really love how you mentioned that it enables you to get a better understanding of self. I remember the first time
Mm,
I looked at my human design chart, and very similar, I got quite
mm,
emotional. I was like, "I
yeah.
finally feel seen." Like,
Yes.
yes, this is my experience, and I finally feel
Literally.
like I make sense. Like, the corporate profiles weren't doing it for me. My star
No.
sign kinda did it for me. It was like all
Yes.
combination of all these, modalities into this one tool that I was like, "Oh." And then it was like, "Okay, so what are you gonna do about it?"
Yeah.
To your point, what's the action off the back of that?
What's the integration, right? So how do
Yeah.
I integrate all this? So what does that mean? So for example, I'm a manifesting generator. You're a manifester. So different, but yet still quite similar. So I to my core am actually a generator type, whereas you're not. You don't have I have motors to my throat. I've got this energy that just needs to be burnt. I'm 100 miles an hour. I'm skipping steps, to get to the end because it's quicker. Like everything's fast, fast, fast. So for a manifesting generator, they can feel very stuck and very, oh, I just don't know, overwhelmed because I don't know where to go next because they're just trying to do everything all at once. And when I understood this, that really made sense to me of this whole doing, success is defined by what you do. Well, that for me is, I don't believe that. It's for who you be. And when I started to learn this about myself, I was like, okay, this is unresourceful behavior of a manifesting generator, is to be so go, 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 go. But what happens is we're not allowing for the universe to send us the things that we need to help us be clear. So we need to create clarity in our life by stopping and just chilling for a second, as hard as that is. Like patience is a really big word for me. And then when I've sat back and, for the last 5 months and chilled my nervous system, my my work, my training, well, not really, but I've been doing strength stuff. Everything has just started to fall into line. My relationships I've been able to integrate. I'm starting to get signs from the universe. Like it's insane. You, on the other hand, and so I can work the typical 9 to 5 job, but you, on the other hand, it's not like that. And so if I'm a business coach and I'm coaching you and I'm saying to you, but you need to go, 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 you've got to do this, 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 because that's how I do it. So you need this task, this task, this task. I'm going to send you off on your way. You would go, no, I can't do that. And so this is where I love human design, because when I'm working with my clients, I'm not suggesting to my clients that you need to be like me, because that's what we do. Like we tend to lead from our own experiences. So it's like, well, if you're in business and you're a go, 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 you're going to be sort of inspiring your clients to be doing similar, maybe not. But for me, when I work with my clients, I know that you're a manifester, and I know that you're here to bring in the inspiration. I know you're here to inspire others and to initiate things. And so you're not meant to work. You're meant to work in a wave. So you might have a week of output, and then you need to take 3 or 4 days rest because that's exhausting, right? And then I've had a projector clients, and again, it's similar again, but then they're here to be the wise leader, the wise one. So, when I get to work with a projector, I love it because it means I'm going to get so much out of it, because they read your mind. They have so much wisdom. And so that's what I love about human design, is that when I'm working with clients, I can use that to get a gist of, I have a reflector. There's 2% of the population are made up of reflectors, and I've got one to work with, and I'm so excited about it. And it's interesting I only had this realization. We're in Voxer, and she's had this issue that's come up with her business, and we've talked about it in the early days, but she's got to wait 20, I mean, look, it's when I say this, it's not gospel, so please understand that. But they work on the cycle of the moon. So they can't make decisions in the now like I can. But it was funny because I'm like not pushing her, but I'm like, okay, we need to look at this. This is something we need to look at. Are we looking at it? Have you considered this angle, considered that angle? And then I was like, hang on a minute, Vicki. She's a reflector. She can't make a decision. This is why she's so unsure with this decision. Let's just sit and let her I'll just hold space for her. And I know that we're going to circle back to this after, say, 28 days. But when she starts to understand this about herself, so she deconditions herself to understanding how she works best in this world, she may find that after 12 days of sitting with something, then she can make a decision. So it doesn't necessarily have to be the 28 days, but she does need to just wait. It was so interesting. I was just like, oh, I can't understand why she's not making this decision right now. Like, I'm a manifesting generator, I would have done it yesterday,
Yeah.
But it's not like that. So
Yeah,
thank
she's
the
not like
Lord.
me. Why is
No,
that not? Why is she not?
right?
Why not computing?
Right. So that's what I love with human design. Yeah.
And so if someone's like, I'm going to I need to check out human design. The disc profile isn't working for me. Personality tests aren't working for me. What's a really actionable step someone can do in the next 24 to 48 hours to learn more about their human design?
They can jump onto my website and they can jump on and do their free chart, send a screenshot of it to me, to my DMs on Instagram. And I would love to share something. If they've got a question, I'll do this for you, for your show. And that's an actionable step. And they can screenshot it, send it to me, and I will answer a question for them. Because honestly, it's understanding your emotional wave, understanding, your emotions, which is huge when it comes to manifesting, that heart coherence, and having our emotions in line as well. So we become magnetic. And so if we're struggling with our emotions and we're struggling to understand why we're in these waves, or why we're people pleasing and all those things, I can see that and I can guide, and ask the questions. And then it just gives people the opportunity to have the insight themselves and to learn, because until we're having the insight ourselves, we're not learning. We're hearing, but we're
True.
not learning.
Very true. And that is a very generous gift. Thank you so much. And human design was a life-changing tool for me. So anyone
Yeah.
listening to this, please take Vicki up on that offer. You will
Yeah.
not regret it.
No.
And so, Vicki, if someone's interested in finding out more about the work that you do, you mentioned Instagram. Where else can they find
Yes.
you?
Look, Instagram is sort of my favorite platform. I am on Facebook as well, but I just forget to jump on there. But yeah, Instagram. Yeah, check out my content. I do. It's interesting. I do a lot of different things, but I am stepping sort of into that families, and helping parents understand their children and how to support their children into not conditioning them to be a certain way, and just really nurturing their gifts. And it's changed my life and my family in the way that I parent and step parent, definitely step parenting. But yeah, so yeah.
And I'll pop those details in the show notes, and what you shared at the beginning of the show, it definitely shows just the expertise you have with being able to deal with those past experiences and support families. So not only human design, not only fitness content, but supporting families as well. You definitely are able to support people with a lot of different areas. So highly recommend checking out Vicki's work. But thank you so much again, Vicki, for your time today. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's been an honor. Thank you.
Thank you for joining me today for another episode of the Actually You Can podcast. I so enjoy having you here, and I hope you've taken away powerful insights and tools that will support you to achieve your high-level results. Now, before you go apply all of this wisdom in your life, I would be so grateful if you are able to leave us a podcast review on the platform that you're listening to, or share this episode with a friend. Your support means that we can help more self-led, high-performing individuals just like you expand what's possible for them. I'd also love to hear your thoughts on today's episode, so please go on and shoot me a note on socials and let me know what you think. You can find me on Instagram at MIFGalloway. Now, go ahead and make those dreams a reality. Because actually,